There are periods in life when a person enters singleness not because they no longer have anyone to love, but because they no longer have the ability to keep losing themselves. This is not the emptiness that society so often labels it as. It is a very particular kind of stillness. A stillness that, if you are brave enough to remain within it, will transform the entire way you see life, love, and yourself. Those who are truly awakening rarely view singleness as a phase of lack. On the contrary, they experience it as a doorway, not loud, not filled with dazzling light, just a doorway opening into a space that very few people in their lifetime dare to enter. A space where the soul begins to speak after years of being buried beneath roles, expectations, and the fear of losing someone else. Carl Jung once said, "The one who looks outward dreams, the one who looks inward awakens." Yet very few people are quiet enough to truly look inward, and paradoxically, it is singleness that creates the most perfect conditions for that quiet to exist. There is one thing very few people realize. Human beings are not truly afraid of loneliness. What they fear is the moment of being alone long enough that they can no longer run away from themselves. Because when all external noise gradually fades away, when there are no more messages to wait for, no one to respond to, no roles left to perform, a very ancient question begins to echo in the mind. Who am I really when no one is looking at me? That question is not new. It has existed since the moment humans first became conscious of themselves. But in a noisy world where people are constantly connected, constantly noticed, constantly validated, that question is often buried very deep. Not because it is unimportant, but because it is too important and too frightening. Singleness, to most of society, is a state that must be escaped, a void that needs to be filled, a sign of lack. But for those who are entering a phase of inner awakening, singleness no longer carries that meaning. It becomes a space where, for the first time, a person is no longer pulled toward others, but pulled back toward themselves. Carl Jung once said that the soul does not speak in noise, it only whispers in silence. And paradoxically, the more we try to fill life with relationships, with busyness, with social noise, the farther we drift from that voice. There are people who pass through dozens of relationships, yet have never stayed long enough with themselves. They are accustomed to seeing themselves reflected through the eyes of others, accustomed to feeling that they exist only when they are loved, accustomed to knowing who they are only through the emotions of the person in front of them. And then, when all relationships temporarily fall away, they call it loss. But for some people, very few people, that moment is felt instead as a quiet liberation. Not joy, not suffering. Just a feeling that is difficult to name, as if some part of them has finally been allowed to breathe again after years of being tightly compressed. The initial silence is not comfortable at all. It exposes things we previously did not have the time or the courage to face. Repetitive thoughts, unprocessed memories, unanswered questions from childhood, nameless emotions that were pushed aside because this is not the right time. In silence, there is no one left to blame, no one to distract us, and no one to rescue us from ourselves. This is why many people rush into another relationship, not out of love, but out of fear of facing the inner emptiness. But those who are awakening are different. They do not rush to fill the space. They stay. They stay with long evenings. They stay with mornings that begin without plans. They stay with the initial feeling of emptiness without hastily labeling it as something negative. And it is precisely there, in that undefined space, that the soul begins to speak, not in words, not in clear images, but through very subtle sensations. A vague discomfort when recalling an old relationship, a strange lightness upon realizing that one no longer has to try to please anyone, a sadness with no clear source, yet one that no longer causes panic. Jung called this the phase of reorientation of psychic energy, when libido, the life energy, no longer flows outward in search of validation, but begins to return toward the inner center. This is a very natural movement, yet one that society rarely encourages, because a person who turns inward is harder to control, harder to manipulate, and less dependent. In silence, people begin to recognize a simple yet profound truth, that many past relationships did not arise from love, but from fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough, fear of being alone with unhealed wounds. When these fears are no longer shielded by the presence of others, they surface. And it is at that moment that true healing begins. Not healing in order to return to love as before, but to love from a different place within oneself. A subtle shift takes place during this phase. People begin to react less and observe more. They no longer rush to label emotions as good or bad. They learn to sit with them as if sitting beside an old friend they have not seen in a long time. No fixing, no forcing, just presence. And the more present they become, the more they realize that most of their past suffering did not come from being hurt by others, but from abandoning themselves in order to maintain connection. Silence is no longer frightening. It becomes a teacher who speaks very little, but always points to the truth by allowing you to see it for yourself. Within that space, people begin to experience a very different kind of fullness. Not the fullness that comes from having someone beside them, but the fullness that comes from no longer resisting themselves. A sense of enough that is gentle, quiet, yet more enduring than any intense emotion ever received from the outside. And from this foundation, something essential begins to form: the ability to love without losing oneself. But to reach that point, there is still another stretch of the journey, a stretch where masks must fall away, shadows must be faced directly, and the rejected parts within us must be brought back home. This is when the persona begins to collapse, and the real journey finally begins. There is a very particular moment in a person's inner journey. It is not loud, there are no obvious signs, and it carries none of the drama of external breakdowns. Yet once it happens, one can never return to who they were before. It is the moment when a person begins to realize that most of their life has been lived through a role. Carl Jung called that role the persona, the mask a person wears to adapt to the world. Persona is not deception. On the contrary, it is a necessary structure. Through persona, we learn how to integrate, communicate, be accepted, and survive in society. Without a persona, human life would be extremely difficult. But the problem is not that we have a persona. The problem is that we forget it is only a mask. In love, the persona becomes more refined than in any other area of life, because love does not only require presence, it also requires being chosen. And when the desire to be chosen becomes too strong, people are willing to adjust themselves to fit the gaze of another. We become gentler than we truly feel. We become more patient than we still have strength for. We stay silent where we should speak. We speak where we should remain silent. At first, these adjustments are very small, almost insignificant. But over time, they accumulate. And eventually, we no longer know where healthy flexibility ends and self-betrayal begins. In relationships, persona is often disguised under very beautiful names: for love, for harmony, to preserve the bond. But the soul does not care about those names. It registers only one thing: are you being honest with yourself or not? Singleness, especially after deep emotional experiences, creates a very strange kind of emptiness. There is no longer anyone to reflect our role back to us, no one to reinforce the image we have grown accustomed to performing. And when there is no audience, the role begins to wobble. At first, the collapse of the persona is often accompanied by a sense of disorientation. A person may feel empty, as if they have lost a part of their identity. They begin to ask, if I am no longer the nice one, the strong one, the always okay one, the one who always sacrifices, then who am I? This is a very dangerous question for the ego, but an absolutely necessary one for inner maturation. Jung believed that the persona is necessary for society, but the self, the true being, is the center of psychological life. When a person lives too long within the persona, they may succeed, be loved, be recognized, yet inside they grow increasingly hollow, a very subtle hollowness because it does not show itself through intense pain, but through a quiet, lingering exhaustion. Many people do not realize they are exhausted from performing. They only know that they no longer feel alive, no longer feel real, no longer feel fully present in their own lives. When the persona begins to fall away, long suppressed emotions start to surface: anger that was once labeled unacceptable, sadness that was pushed aside because one had to stay strong, envy, selfishness, fragility, things that did not fit the image we worked so hard to maintain. And this is where many people panic, because they confuse seeing the less beautiful parts with becoming a bad person. But Jung emphasized that what is rejected does not disappear, it simply goes into the shadow. and whatever is pushed into the shadow will find a way to return, often through relationships. When the persona collapses in singleness, a person is given a rare opportunity to observe themselves without defense, without needing to be right, without needing to be good, just to be real. The truth at first can be disappointing. We may realize that we are not as noble as we once believed, not as forgiving as the image we tried to sustain, not as strong as the role we played. But within this disillusionment, something essential is released. We no longer have to spend energy becoming someone other than ourselves. There is a very deep relief when a person allows themselves to be imperfect. Not the kind of giving up, but the kind of mature acceptance. Accepting that we have limits, accepting that we have needs, boundaries, and parts that do not wish to compromise. The persona often convinces people that love requires constant sacrifice. But when the persona falls away, another truth slowly emerges. Real love does not require you to disappear. In this phase, people begin to understand why many past relationships ended, not because there was a lack of effort, but because there was too much effort in the wrong way. Effort to maintain an image, a role, harmony, while neglecting inner vitality. The collapse of the persona does not happen in a single day. It unfolds layer by layer. Each time you choose truth over what is pleasant to hear. Each time you choose to leave instead of staying to please. Each time you allow yourself to feel disappointment, anger, weakness, without rushing to fix it. And gradually, a new sense of identity forms. Quiet, unassuming, an identity built from inner alignment rather than external validation. This is also when a person's view of love begins to change. They no longer seek someone to fill a void. They seek resonance, no longer seek someone to save them. They seek someone who can walk alongside them. But before that can happen, there is something even deeper that must be faced. Because when the persona falls away, what appears behind it is not only the true self, but also the shadow, the parts that were rejected, suppressed, deemed unacceptable. And no one can enter mature love without first looking directly at their own shadow. That is the next journey, a journey that is not comfortable but cannot be avoided. There is a paradox that is very difficult to accept. The things we try hardest not to become are often the very forces quietly directing our lives. Carl Jung called this part the shadow, not in a moral sense, not as evil, but as the totality of aspects of the self that were once not accepted and therefore pushed out of conscious awareness. As children, every human being learns to adjust themselves in order to be loved, not through reasoning, but through instinct. We observe the reactions of adults. We notice when we are praised and when we are scolded. Gradually, we learn that there are parts of us that are acceptable and parts that are not. Anger may be seen as bad, vulnerability may be seen as shameful, selfishness may be seen as wrong, sadness may be seen as a burden. And so, not because they disappear, but because we are not allowed to keep them. These parts are pushed beneath the surface of consciousness. We no longer recognize them as ours, but they are still there, alive, waiting. The shadow does not disappear when it is rejected. It only changes the way it exists. When the persona falls away, when there is no longer a need to maintain an image, the shadow begins to emerge, not to destroy, but to be seen. Yet this moment often creates great confusion. People may panic when they discover thoughts and emotions within themselves that they once believed were not who I am, a truth that is very hard to swallow. We are not only what we are proud of, we are also what we are ashamed of, what we reject, what we have never allowed ourselves to acknowledge. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Much of what we call fate in love is, in fact, the repetition of the shadow. We are drawn to people who activate old wounds. We feel anger toward behaviors that reflect parts we do not want to see. We despise in others the traits that, deep down, we fear may also exist in us. Those who constantly criticize others often carry a long suppressed shadow. Those who always play the victim have never allowed themselves to acknowledge their anger. Those who are overly controlling often hide a deep fear of vulnerability. But instead of looking inward, people usually choose the easier path, projection. Projection is the mechanism by which we assign to others what we do not want to recognize in ourselves. We see them as selfish, while we have never allowed ourselves to have needs. We see them as cold while we are afraid to admit our own distance. We see them as weak while we learned very early to reject our own pain. In relationships, projection makes us believe the problem lies entirely in the other person. But in singleness, when there is no longer anyone to carry that role, projection loses its anchor, and the shadow returns to where it truly belongs, within us. This moment is not comfortable because it requires a level of honesty that not everyone is ready for. Honesty not to self-blame, but to see. Not to fix immediately, but to understand. When people begin to work with the shadow, they realize something crucial. The shadow is not an enemy. It is simply what has been forgotten, and everything that is forgotten seeks a way back. Anger, when acknowledged, is no longer destructive. It becomes energy that protects boundaries. Sadness, when allowed to exist, is no longer weakness. It becomes the capacity to feel deeply. Selfishness, when properly understood, is no longer immoral. It becomes the ability to care for oneself. The shadow does not ask us to act it out. It only asks to be acknowledged. In this phase, people begin to experience very strange moments. They notice that they react less, explode less, blame less, not because they have become better, but because they have come to understand themselves. They understand that anger is not always directed outward. They understand that discomfort is often a signal. They understand that what they hate in others are valuable clues about themselves. Working with the shadow is not about obsessively digging through the past. It is about observing the present with honesty. Each time a strong emotion arises, instead of asking, "Who did this to me?" we begin to ask, "Which part of me is being touched?" That question does not make the pain disappear immediately, but it changes the direction of energy, from outward discharge to inward return, from reaction to awareness, and from there, a very different kind of freedom begins to form. Not freedom from emotions, but freedom from being unconsciously controlled by them. A person who has begun to integrate their shadow no longer seeks perfection in love. They no longer demand that another fill the parts they themselves have not dared to touch. They enter relationships with inner humility, knowing that they have light and they also have shadow. But for the shadow to be truly integrated, there is still a deeper layer to face. Because there are not only rejected personal aspects, but also archetypal images, masculine and feminine energies within every human being that silently shape how we love. This is when the journey leads us to anima and animus, and there many illusions about love will collapse. Once a person begins to see their shadow, something subtler gradually emerges. No longer rough like anger, no longer heavy like sadness, yet exerting far greater influence. The inner images we unconsciously carry into love. Carl Jung called these images anima and animus. Anima is the feminine image within a man. Animus is the masculine image within a woman. But if we understand anima and animus solely in terms of biological sex, we miss the most important point. Jung was not speaking about external male or female. He was speaking about psychological archetypes formed very early from childhood experiences with parents, caregivers, and the surrounding emotional environment. Before we love a specific person, we already carry a vague image of the one who will love me. This image is unclear, without a concrete face, yet it carries a familiar feeling, a feeling like something missing, waiting to be completed. And when we meet someone who touches that feeling, something powerful happens. We do not only love them, we recognize them. This sense of recognition is often mistaken for destiny, but in many cases, it is the moment when anima or animus is activated. We do not see the actual person before us. We see our own inner image reflected. This is why the early stages of love often feel magical. We perceive the other as more special than anyone else. We sense a deep connection even without truly knowing each other. We believe we have finally found the missing piece. But in truth, what is being loved is not the other person, but a part within us that has been awakened. Anima and animus carry qualities we have not fully lived within ourselves. A man may love a woman for her gentleness, depth, vibrancy, not only because she possesses them, but because he has suppressed those qualities within himself. A woman may love a man for his decisiveness, steadiness, confidence, not only because he has them, but because she has never allowed herself to access her own inner strength. Love at this stage becomes a form of psychological compensation. and there is nothing wrong with that. In the early phase of development, anima and animus serve as bridges. They lead us toward parts of ourselves that have not yet been lived. The problem begins only when we identify the other person with our inner image and forget that they are an independent human being. When this happens, expectations arise. We do not only want them to be themselves, we need them to continue playing the role of the image we have placed upon them. We need them not to change, because if they do, our inner image collapses. And when the other no longer reflects exactly as we desire, which is inevitable, we feel betrayed. But what is betrayed is not love. What is broken is illusion. Many relationships dissolve at this stage, not for lack of feeling, but because anima or animus is no longer being nourished. The other begins to live more authentically, less ideally, less in line with the inner image, and we call that falling out of love. But Jung believed this is not failure, it is a threshold. Either we continue seeking someone else to project the old image onto and repeat the cycle, or we turn inward and ask, which part of myself have I given away to others? When a person enters singleness after these experiences, anima and animus have no place to be projected, no one left to hold the image, and so the qualities once loved in another begin demanding to be lived within oneself. This is a very subtle process, often mistaken for loss of interest in love, but in reality it is the maturation of the capacity to love. A man begins to learn how to feel, not just act. A woman begins to learn how to direct, not just wait. Not to become someone else, but to become more whole. Jung called this the integration of anima and animus. When the inner images are no longer projected outward, but return to the center of consciousness, a person no longer needs another to feel complete. And paradoxically, it is at that moment that they gain the capacity to enter a healthy relationship. Because when we no longer need another to complete us, we can meet them as a human being, not as a solution. We do not love them because they fill a void, but because we want to share the vitality already present within. Love at this stage loses its initial magic, but in return it gains something deeper. Truth. The truth that the other has limits, the truth that we also have limits. And love is not dissolution, but companionship. Yet to reach this stage, one more crucial element remains: life energy. For even after seeing the shadow and removing projection, if a person's energy remains scattered, they will continue seeking fulfillment outside. This is when the journey leads to libido, inner discipline, and the center of will. Once a person has gone through the stage of facing their inner shadow, dismantling projected images, and beginning to integrate anima or animus, they enter an even more important stage. Life energy returns to the center. In Jungian terms, this life energy is called libido, not merely sexual energy, but creative, inward-directed energy, the vitality that drives all action, emotion, and perception. When a person no longer projects their inner images outward, libido is no longer drained by loving an image, but instead turns inward to nourish the center of will and inner wholeness. This explains a remarkable phenomenon noted by many psychologists, philosophers, and artists. The person who no longer desires, the person who no longer depends on others to complete themselves, becomes the most attractive. They are attractive not because they are beautiful or powerful, but because pure, self-directed life energy radiates from them, a type of allure entirely different from the initial enchantment of anima or animus. At first, you are drawn by the inner image, by the reflection of what is missing in you. Now you are drawn by their completeness, libido and the center of will. To understand this, one must observe how libido operates. When life energy is scattered toward desiring another, hoping they perfect your inner image, a person becomes restless, dependent, and vulnerable. All attraction at this stage is artificial. It comes from need, not freedom. Conversely, when libido returns to the center, it generates inner strength. A person can stand alone and still feel complete. They live fully with joy, creativity, and responsibility to themselves. They do not need to judge or demand that others be as imagined. Jung emphasized that this is the stage of maximal human maturity. The center of will is no longer governed by inner images, but becomes the place where freely returning life energy nourishes autonomy, creativity, and self-awareness. The attraction of inner freedom. There is a profound paradox in love and attraction. The desiring person often tries to possess, depend on, or control another to fill an inner void. The person who no longer desires, who has lived fully within themselves and seeks nothing outside, becomes immensely captivating. This attraction does not come from appearance or effort. It comes from balance and wholeness. When a person lives fully, their energy radiates like a natural light, drawing others unconsciously. This is why Jung and other psychoanalysts observe that many deep, lasting relationships often form with those who have experienced solitude, face their shadows, and live independently, rather than with those who are merely outwardly attractive or fulfill one's immediate needs. The journey from desire to freedom. This journey does not happen overnight. It unfolds in 3 stages: recognition and confrontation of the shadow, where a person acknowledges the darkness within, the rejected or suppressed parts; integration of anima and animus, where one learns not to rely on others to complete themselves, yet can still love; libido returns to the center, where one nourishes life energy, willpower, and inner freedom, generating natural attraction. At each stage, a person loses an illusion. First, the idealized image, then dependent desire, and finally the need for external validation. Yet with each loss, they move closer to authentic love, not possessive love, but companionship and shared vitality. What does no longer desiring mean? The person who no longer desires is not apathetic. They still feel emotion, still experience joy and longing, but they do not depend on another to feel complete. They fear no loss, seek no attention, and place no conditions on love. When they enter a relationship, they love because they want to share, not because they need. This creates a profound freedom, and it is precisely this freedom that makes them more attractive than any inner image ever projected onto another. Pure life energy and maturity. At this stage, a person has experienced solitude, loss, and confronted illusions in love. Libido returning to the center not only makes them more attractive, but fully matures them. They no longer fear emotions or their inner shadow. They realize that vitality does not depend on another. They can enter relationships fully while maintaining freedom and integrity. And it is this integrity, the lack of need to desire to fill a void, that makes them deeply, enduringly attractive, surpassing any external charm that ever existed. Once a person has reached the stage where libido has returned to the center, having undergone inner maturation and become naturally attractive through pure self-directed life energy, they begin to enter a subtler phase of love. This is no longer love based on desire, possession, or reflection of inner illusions, but mature love, where both individuals can fully accompany each other without causing harm while maintaining their own integrity. An internally free person is someone who does not need another to complete themselves. When entering a relationship, they bring no excessive expectations, demands, or fears. This creates a rare foundation for love, emotional safety, where each individual can live authentically without fear of judgment or imposition. In this relationship, life energy, libido, is not scattered by the need to control or possess, but directed toward creation and nurturing the bond, like a stream of vitality flowing through 2 people, helping them grow together. An internally free person is not only attractive, but also inspires their partner to mature. When encountering someone complete within, many feel compelled to explore their own inner world, learn to stand alone, and find fulfillment within themselves. This is why mature relationships often lead to deep, enduring, and creative love. Unlike relationships based on possession, where each person wants the other to change, to complete themselves, or always meet their needs, mature love operates on the principle of companionship rather than ownership. Jung referred to relationships based on possession as love rooted in reflection, where one partner mirrors the inner illusions of the other. In contrast, the internally mature person loves by respecting the wholeness of the other while preserving their own integrity. Both individuals do not compete for power, are not controlled by jealousy or fear, but share experiences, emotions, and creativity freely while maintaining personal space for individual growth. It is precisely this freedom and mutual respect that makes the relationship sustainable and attractive, not based on initial attraction or inner projections, but on simultaneous and reciprocal maturation. One of the most profound paradoxes of mature love is this: when you no longer need the other to feel complete, you love them most deeply and naturally. The internally free person loves without attachment, without fear of loss, without relying on the partner to validate their self worth, and without being controlled by jealousy or fear. When love is expressed this way, it becomes creative, nurturing, and supportive rather than controlling or limiting. This is also how many long lasting and happy relationships exist. Love does not destroy individuality, but enhances personal strength, creating a space where both can grow together. The capacity for full companionship is the result of all previous stages of maturation and includes three main elements: inner wholeness, the ability to see the other person as whole without overlaying inner projections, and the use of creative libido within the relationship. At this stage, a relationship is not merely about emotion or sexuality. It becomes a creative experience where two individuals mature together, supporting each other to become the best versions of themselves without losing freedom. Ultimately, mature love brings true happiness, not the kind based on dependency or temporary satisfaction. It provides inner security, creative fulfillment, and the capacity to love deeply, not out of lack, but out of a desire to share experiences and genuine connection. Jung emphasized that a mature relationship is the union of two wholes, not the merging of two incomplete halves. At this stage, neither person fears loss nor seeks to possess, and love becomes a powerful, free, and enduring life force, opening a new horizon for both, continuous growth and creativity within shared life. Once a person has fully understood mature love and the power of inner freedom, the next step is to apply these principles to real life, transforming theory into daily experience. Mature love does not appear spontaneously. It is the result of a process of self-discipline, deep observation, and awareness, while continuously creating space for both oneself and the partner. This is a stage where libido is no longer merely sexual energy, but creative life energy guided by wisdom, consciousness, and gratitude. One of the core elements in practicing mature love is self-awareness. Before loving another, each person must deeply understand their own needs, boundaries, strengths, weaknesses, and old emotional patterns. This is crucial because only when one truly knows themselves can they avoid depending on the partner for validation. Jung emphasized that facing one's inner darkness, fears, jealousy, illusions, is a prerequisite for achieving mature love. An individual who is internally mature is not swayed by fleeting emotions, does not overreact to minor conflicts, and can maintain calm and understanding in any situation, providing a solid foundation for any relationship. When entering a relationship, clear and transparent communication is one of the most essential skills. The internally mature person does not expect the partner to read their mind or emotions. Instead, they know how to express feelings, needs, and boundaries honestly and respectfully. This prevents misunderstandings, reduces jealousy and conflict, and helps both parties feel safe and valued. Communication is not only verbal, but also encompasses behavior, attitude, and mindful presence, truly listening without judgment and responding with empathy. This is how mature love develops into a creative and nurturing space where both individuals can be themselves without fear of losing value or freedom. Another important principle is the ability to maintain personal space. The internally mature person understands that love does not mean total merging, but full companionship. Each individual still needs time and space to cultivate personal interests, creativity, career, and other social relationships. When both respect this space, the relationship does not become confined or tense. Instead, it becomes diverse, vibrant, and alive. This also ensures that creative libido is not wasted on conflict or possession, but directed toward positive experiences and deep connection. Mature love also requires the capacity for forgiveness and letting go. In real life, no one is perfect, and every relationship encounters moments of friction, misunderstanding, or disappointment. The internally mature person does not hold grudges or obsess over the past. They learn to see mistakes as a natural part of growth, allowing forgiveness for both the partner and themselves. Letting go does not mean abandoning the relationship, but releasing negative energy, keeping love fresh and alive while strengthening trust and security within the bond. Another key aspect is the ability to nurture genuine intimacy. Intimacy here is not merely physical, but a spiritual, emotional, and intellectual connection. It includes sharing deep thoughts, fears, dreams, and life experiences without fear of judgment. When both partners feel safe to fully open themselves, love becomes profound and enduring because there is no pretense or concealment. Spiritual intimacy bridges creative libido, fostering both personal growth and the growth of the relationship, while generating a natural sense of happiness that is not based on possession or control. Finally, mature love is a continuous journey. It does not end once two people are in love. It always requires mindfulness, self awareness, and ongoing adjustment. Every experience, challenge, and life change becomes an opportunity for love to mature further. When practiced correctly, mature love becomes a source of life energy, creative inspiration, and a solid foundation for long term happiness, where both individuals can grow together, share fully, and enjoy each moment of life completely. In modern society, the concept of mature love has become both crucial and complex. Today's fast paced life, professional pressures, social media, and diverse relationships create new challenges while also offering opportunities to practice mature love. No longer simply idealizing one's partner, mature love today is a life skill, requiring the ability to balance oneself, the partner, and the surrounding environment. Number one, mature love and work. One often overlooked aspect is the impact of mature love on work performance. Internally mature individuals who can regulate their emotions and maintain calm in relationships often find it easier to sustain focus and high productivity. When love does not become a source of stress or pressure, emotional energy is freed, allowing individuals to be more creative and make better decisions. Conversely, when love becomes a burden due to jealousy, control, or unrealistic expectations, people are easily distracted, stressed, and fatigued, directly affecting work performance. Therefore, practicing self awareness, transparent communication, and maintaining personal space not only strengthens the relationship, but also enhances individual capability in the modern environment, where pressure and competition are inevitable. For example, a mature couple can plan work and support each other without excessively infringing on personal time. They understand that love is not about binding or forcing, but about companionship, where each person develops and supports the other positively. Thus, mature love becomes a source of energy that supports and advances careers rather than serving as a barrier or pressure. 2. Mature love and family. Family is the environment that tests mature love most profoundly. Within a family, relationships extend beyond the romantic couple to include parents, children, relatives, and social responsibilities. Internally mature individuals understand that love does not mean complying with every demand, but involves respect, understanding, and nurturing growth for all members. For example, in marriage, mature partners do not force each other to change according to personal desires. Instead, they support mutual growth, share responsibilities, and face challenges together. When children appear, mature love manifests in the ability to educate without imposition, balancing firmness and empathy, so that children learn independence and self mastery while still feeling unconditional love from their parents. A mature family relationship also includes the ability to resolve conflicts without causing lasting harm. Arguments are inevitable, but how they are handled through transparent communication, empathy, and forgiveness determines the long term quality of the relationship. This clearly demonstrates that mature love is not merely emotion, but an art of living within a community where every action carries awareness and responsibility. 3. Mature love and friendships. In modern society, friends and social networks play a significant role in shaping one's understanding of love and relationships. Mature love is not limited to a romantic partner, but also encompasses the ability to maintain healthy friendships, free from selfishness, jealousy, or control, and characterized by generosity and sharing. Internally mature individuals know that by maintaining emotional independence, they do not rely on friends for validation, nor impose emotional pressure. Instead, they give sincerity, empathy, and support when needed, building a sustainable social network that reflects back into romantic relationships. The more mature one is with friends, the more mature one becomes in love. 4. Mature love and mental health. Another critical but often overlooked aspect is the effect of mature love on mental health. When loving in a mature way, individuals are less likely to experience anxiety, jealousy, or emotional dependence, reducing stress and improving sleep, energy, and overall mental well being. In contrast, immature love based on possession, unrealistic expectations, or excessive dependence can cause stress, depression, and other mental health issues. Therefore, cultivating mature love is truly a strategy to protect mental health, helping individuals maintain balance between emotions, reasoning, and behavior. Number 5, challenges of mature love in modern society. Even when one understands and practices mature love, modern society presents significant challenges. Temptation and abundant choices, social media, dating apps, and the notion of maximum freedom make it easy to be distracted and difficult to maintain long term commitment. Economic and professional pressures, financial or work stress can strain love if not managed with internal maturity. Immature emotional patterns. Many adults grow up in relationships lacking empathy or with controlling dynamics, making it difficult to practice mature love without deliberate self training. To overcome these challenges, mature individuals need to continuously self reflect, practice communication skills, learn forgiveness, maintain personal freedom, and cultivate authentic connection with their partner. This is an ongoing journey where each day presents an opportunity for love to become more mature. In any society, long term relationships have always posed significant challenges for human beings. As modern society develops at an unprecedented pace, the need for genuine connection remains. Yet the way to maintain long lasting relationships has profoundly changed. Mature love becomes a decisive factor, as it is not merely a short term emotion, but an art of living, where reason, emotion, and behavior must work together harmoniously. Number 1, balancing personal freedom and emotional connection. One of the most important principles for sustaining a long term relationship is balancing personal freedom with emotional connection. Mature individuals understand that love does not mean possession or control. Strong bonds are built on trust, respect, and support. Yet each person must still have space to develop individually, nurturing passions, hobbies, and personal goals. When a relationship lacks personal freedom, feelings of suffocation arise, causing tension and making the bond fragile. Conversely, excessive freedom can lead to distance and lack of understanding, causing emotions to fade. Therefore, mature individuals learn to communicate transparently, establish healthy boundaries, and accompany each other without controlling, ensuring the relationship remains sustainable over time. 2, communication, the foundation of understanding. Communication is the lifeblood of every long term relationship. Mature love is not just about saying, I love you, but about exchanging feelings, needs, and desires clearly and sincerely. Mature individuals know that silence during conflicts only breeds misunderstanding, while constructive discussion without blame helps resolve issues. Communication principles in mature love include active listening, not just hearing, but empathizing and responding appropriately to emotions. Expressing feelings without causing harm, using I feel rather than you did to avoid blame. Discussing instead of arguing, turning every conflict into an opportunity to understand each other more deeply. Transparency about expectations, avoiding leaving the partner guessing about one's needs or desires. Effective communication not only reduces conflicts, but also increases closeness, reinforces trust, and creates a sense of safety, key elements of a sustainable relationship. 3, accompanying each other through change and challenges. Modern life is constantly changing. Careers, health, family, and social environments can shift unexpectedly. Mature love requires the ability to journey together through these changes, rather than fleeing at the first sign of difficulty. Mature individuals understand that challenges are not the end, but opportunities for the relationship to grow stronger. Together, they plan long term finances, personal goals, family plans, share burdens, responsibilities at work, caring for family, raising children, adapt and be flexible, accept that sometimes compromise or changing behavior is necessary to suit the situation. Couples who accompany each other through life build strong trust, a sense of security, and deep connection, making love a stable foundation for life rather than a fleeting emotion. 4, nurturing affection, the combination of reason and emotion. A successful long term relationship relies not only on feelings, but also on reason and behavior. Mature love is a harmonious blend of heart and mind, where every action is thoughtfully considered while retaining warmth and sincerity. Mature couples often Invest quality time, not just being together, but engaging in meaningful activities such as learning together, exploring shared interests, or participating in community activities. Consistently show care, small gestures, compliments, recognition, and encouragement. Share goals and values, alignment in life perspectives, ethics, and future aspirations. Respect differences, not trying to make the partner a copy of oneself, but seeing differences as complementary. When reason and emotion harmonize, love becomes not only a source of immediate happiness, but also a source of strength for personal growth and sustainable coexistence. 5. Practicing patience and forgiveness. In any long term relationship, mistakes are inevitable. Mature love requires patience and the ability to forgive, not holding conflicts or faults as weapons against the partner. Patience allows both the partner and oneself time to grow, adjust behavior, and learn effective communication. Forgiveness is not about forgetting, but about releasing negative emotions, allowing the relationship to continue growing without being bound by the past. Couples who practice patience and forgiveness tend to have more enduring relationships, fewer conflicts, and see each challenge as an opportunity for their love to mature further. Mature love does not arise naturally. It is cultivated over time through each action, each decision, and every moment of communication. While Part 9 focused on general principles and the art of maintaining a relationship, Part Text delves into daily practice, where each small habit contributes to building a sustainable and happy relationship. 1. Daily communication habits. Effective communication does not occur only during conflicts or disagreements. It needs to be repeated in everyday interactions. Small habits with great impact include sharing feelings daily, no need for grand stories, simply asking, "How are you feeling today?" and listening sincerely. Expressing gratitude. A simple thank you for a small act from your partner creates positive connection and strengthens long term affection. Casual conversations without goals. Spending time just chatting, laughing, and sharing minor life details helps maintain intimacy and comfort. Daily communication habits enhance empathy, reduce conflicts, and build a foundation for larger relationship skills. 2. Practicing deep listening. Deep listening is the most important skill in mature love. It is not only hearing words, but understanding the emotions, thoughts, and needs underlying them. Observing body language, posture, eye contact, and gestures often reveal more than words. Responding to emotions. Instead of merely replying with information, respond with understanding. For example, "I understand how you feel right now." Avoid interrupting or rushing to judge. Resist the urge to debate immediately, allowing the partner to feel heard and respected. Deep listening not only reduces misunderstandings, but also builds trust and a sense of safety, essential elements for any mature relationship. 3. Habits of accompanying each other through challenges. Fry. A sustainable relationship is built on the ability to overcome difficulties together. Small habits can help couples prepare for challenges. Planning responses together. Finances, health, work, studies. When both discuss and agree, difficulties become more manageable. Emotional support. A word of encouragement, a caring gesture, or simply without judgment can have a significant impact. Practicing smart compromise, understanding that yielding sometimes is not a loss, but an investment in long term peace. These habits help couples develop adaptability, flexibility, and maturity, turning challenges into opportunities to strengthen connection. Number 4, nurturing love through actions. Mature love combines words and actions, where they're demonstrated through tangible behavior. Frequent caring gestures, preparing meals, sending check-in messages, or simply giving a hug after a long day. Investing in shared experiences, learning a new skill together, traveling, attending cultural events, or simply exercising together. Maintaining the element of surprise. Small gifts, unexpected compliments, or a special evening together keep the relationship fresh. Consistent and continuous actions affirm love and increase closeness, making mature love vibrant and reliable. 5. Developing emotional self-management skills. One of the greatest challenges in mature love is managing personal emotions. Mature individuals understand that emotions do not always reflect reality, and acting on negative emotions can harm the relationship. Identifying emotions, distinguishing between anger, frustration, and anxiety to handle them appropriately. Stress reduction techniques. Deep breathing, walking, Meditation or journaling help maintain calm before responding. Separating emotions from behavior. Avoid speaking or acting in anger. Instead, choose the right moment to discuss. Emotional self management not only protects oneself, but also creates a healthy environment, helping the partner feel safe and respected. 6. Building a shared vision and long term goals. Mature love does not focus solely on the present, it requires a shared vision of the future. When both partners share values, goals, and dreams, the relationship becomes stronger and more meaningful. Discussing family and children, perspectives on parenting, responsibilities, and the values to pass on. Financial alignment, planning spending, saving, investing, and avoiding conflicts over money. Supporting career and personal development, encouraging each other to pursue passions, learn, and grow continuously. A shared vision allows both partners to feel united not only in love, but throughout the entire journey of life.